triggers are something that we're all as humans dealing with. The problem is that most of us are dealing with them unconsciously. We're living in a life that's not our own. We're being driven by these, pushed away by these triggers, and we're not being pulled towards our ideal life. And so the question becomes, are you being, what are your triggers? What keeps you stuck? What keeps you trapped in that frustration? I was talking with a client yesterday. We were doing a coaching session, and he was talking about how his significant other triggered him, and how that when he would step into a conversation with some kind of expectation, and expectations are premeditated resentments, folks, but he would step into the situation and he would say, this is the situation, this is the data, and then she would respond in the way that she responds, and then he would react out of that. He would be triggered by that. And you have to understand that many of the thoughts that are ahead, the chatter in our head, the radio station is a default mindset. And we all have files that we live through. The mind itself is not designed to anticipate, as in see new things, work new things. The way the mind is designed, it's a 2 million-year-old software application that's pretty ingenious. It's meant to do one thing and one thing only, and that's make you survive. And what it does is it stores memories. It doesn't really store time. And people think we think in time. We don't think in time. We think in moments, but we store by story. And what we do is identity drives narrative, narrative drives story, and the stories many times are what we're living out of unconsciously that we're not even aware of. So a situation presents itself to us that appears to be like the story that we've got loaded back here in our filing cabinet, and this automatic, almost instantaneous, I say almost instantaneous process happens where we go back and we load the file, that the story that we were told about, whatever happened back there and whatever decisions happened back there, and then we load that in our nervous system. In recovery, we talk about triggers as in how those triggers are those things that make me want to use, that make me want to go out and drink, that make me want to go out and surf porn, that make me want to go out and gamble, that make me want to go out and eat. And there's all kinds of Overachievers Anonymous. There's all kinds of different 12-step groups out there. But the value of learning what your triggers are in those groups is that because you can be very aware of the mechanics of triggers. And for most of us normal people that don't get to go through that level of suffering, and I say get very intentionally, then we have to learn triggers somewhere else. And we're not taught this in school. We're not taught this in the outside world. We have to become aware of this. This is something we need to become conscious with ourselves. And so what a trigger is it's anytime you have a stimulus that makes you feel a certain way, and you have two types of thoughts. You have condensing thoughts that take your consciousness and fold them in, and you have expanding thoughts which expand you out. Now, in addiction, what we learn through addiction science is those triggers. What they do is they set us off on a reaction that has us act in a specific way, and most of the time, that unconscious reaction isn't how we really want to show up. We see a picture of a video of somebody on the internet. Maybe you're surfing porn, or maybe you're watching something, a movie on interventions or something like that, and it reminds you of that specific addiction, that specific thing that you have a deep attachment to through addiction. And what it does is it sets off a whole bunch of series of events in your mind to where your body starts to urge for that specific outcome, right? But these aren't the only types of triggers that we as humans see. We also see in the world, we see triggers that move us forward, certain triggers that you can use. I used to wear a watch everywhere I went, and I had this process that I did for probably about a year, where every time I would when I get up in the morning, I would put on this motivational music. I would put on this, and I worked for Tony Robbins for a decade, so I put on this big motivational music that would just get me pumped up, like, I get all lit up, I get all psyched up, get all motivated, and then I would go through my gratitude list, and I would say all the things that I was grateful for in my life. And then I would say then I would go into all the accomplishments that I had in my life. And then after I did the gratitude and I did the accomplishments, I would load it with all the accomplishments that I was going to acquire in my life. And I did this for about a year. Well, when you're working from a computer, it becomes difficult for me to be able to keep that watch on without that watch breaking or getting in my way, and it was causing corporal tunnels, what I thought was breaking my blood flow. So I was being very resistant to wear it. And I remember one day I was at a Tony Robbins event, and I was clapping, because you do a lot of clapping at a Tony Robbins event, right? And the watch broke. And I lived at that time. I lived in Sioux City, Iowa, and there was not a lot to do in Sioux City. Well, it sat on my desk for probably about, I'd say about 2 months. And one day we were going out for date night. Me and Valerie, we do date nights on Saturdays. And in Sioux City, again, there's not a lot to do. So we were going to go to the movies. And before we went to the movies, we were going to stop at the mall. We are going to stop at the watch store that sits in a little kiosk there in Southern Hills. And we were going to get my watch fixed. I was like, man, I haven't worn this watch in months. I would love to get it fixed. I was thinking my trigger, my anchor, my all this. And so we went through the mall. We were going to the movies. We stopped and got the watch fixed. And when I went and got the watch fixed, this amazing thing happened. I put the watch on, and as soon as I put the watch on, I could feel this energy shoot through my whole body. And it was like all of a sudden, I had all this energy. I had all this gratitude. I had like almost immediately that trigger that I had caused this instant sensation of everything that I'd loaded into that watch. It had created for me an awareness that this stuff actually works. And I was like, wow, this stuff actually, wow. I mean, all of a sudden I feel like, let's go do this, let's go do that. Let me, let's get some flowers, let's smell the roses, let's all this, right? And so then I started building other triggers. And I have this process. There's some stuff that positive psychology has been studying called clothing entrainment. And what clothing entrainment is they believe that, like, have you ever noticed that when you're going for a job interview and you got to put a suit on, when you put the suit on, how much more important you feel? All of a sudden you take on this different posture, right? Oh man, I feel like I should be getting something done. You know what I mean? Or if you have a specific, like my wife, she puts on her she's a hospice nurse, so she puts on her work clothes, and as soon as she puts that work clothes, you start to see her shift, how she's like she's fitting into the identity. And what that is she's triggered over time this process where she goes into nurse mode. When she puts that stuff on, she goes right into nurse, like this nurse identity comes right online. That's clothing entrainment. So I've developed my own little trigger that I've been doing now for I've been doing this for a little over a decade, but I've been studying mission work for about 2 decades, a little over 2 decades now. So what I do is every morning, my trigger is I get up in the morning and I get on my knees and I say a specific prayer. For those of you in recovery, it's a 7-step prayer. My Creator, I pray you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you take from me every single defective character, which keeps me from you being of purpose to you and my fellow man. But then I've added on to that because I've found that I've pinched off loving myself. And so, hey Terry, hey Amy, how's it going? And so I also say, allow me to continue to unfold, continue to dive below my thoughts, because my thoughts are not me. Like, we are not our thoughts. We are the receiver of this radio station that we've tuned into. Another video, another conversation. But I say, oh, crack me open so that I can be more loving, more joyous, more feeling. That's the work that I'm working through right now. And then I put this necklace around my neck and I state my mission. My mission is to create a world where everybody reaches their true potential by making the impossible possible. And my purpose is to channel light, love, and joy. And so then I put this necklace around my neck. And what happens is if I'm working with a client, or if I'm working with my kids, or if I'm just in an area where I'm not feeling that well, or if I'm in a room full of, if I'm doing a speaking gig or something like that, and I feel myself drop into ego where I'm locked in fear, when I don't know what to do, or I don't know who I am, or I don't know, if somehow I'm showing up in a way that isn't the highest version of myself, I have an anchor, I have a trigger. And nobody knows in the room, but I'll just kind of go up and I'll start rubbing on my necklace, and I'll think, okay, I am a holy man. I'll start going through the mantras in my head so that I can start to remember what it is that I am and what it is that I'm here to do. And that allows me the ability to show up the way that I want to show up. We all have those positive triggers where, TD Jakes, if I'm listening to TD Jakes, if I'm listening to Tony Robbins, if I'm listening to, to some of my mentors, some of the people that I aspire to serve in their mission, when our missions align. When I'm listening to those people, it triggers in me a specific part of me that goes into that mode. So we can do it with an item. We can do it with sound. We can do it with video. The other thing that I've noticed is a pretty interesting trigger is when I was living in Colorado Springs, I was working on writing my material. There's a book that's in the works, guys. It's coming. And every Saturday at 10:30, I would go to this specific place. I would sit down and I would start to write. And at first, it was a little bit rough trying to write, trying to unpack all the ideas that I had, because I've got a lot of material that I'm trying to. It's all brand new. Nobody's been seen, so I'm trying to make sense out of this material. And then after a while, it started getting easier and easier, and I started to develop this pattern, this trigger. And so now this interesting thing happens. 10:30 every Saturday morning, I go into this mode of creativity where all of a sudden, because I've developed this groove, this rut, this trigger, where I know at 10:30, my mind knows that at 10:30, Steven's going into creative mode. So at 10:30 on Saturday, I just get this massive download of ideas that just keep coming to me because I've developed the rut. I've created a trigger that at a specific time during the week, I'm doing a specific thing, a specific type of thing, and that allows me the ability to trigger myself in a way that serves me, that drives me forward. And so today the question is what are your triggers? Like, what are your negative triggers? What are the things that trip you up? And at the same time, what are the positive triggers? What are the triggers that you're actively using to use this part of us? Because this is a man-made, this isn't something that we build. This isn't something that we could do. This is something that we do. That's right, I said do, right? And then you either have do or you have do, right? You get to choose. And so most of us do this stuff unconsciously. We're driven by triggers unconsciously, not by ways that serve us. So the question becomes, what are you doing today to deal with the negative triggers? And at the same time, what are you doing every day to build those triggers that allow you the ability to serve and show up the way that you want to serve and show up? Ask yourself those questions. The reality is that most of us live unconsciously. Most of us are living out of stories. We start to process what those stories are. It gives us the opportunity to start to live in a more fuller, richer life.